Good evening, everyone. This is Mitch. Hope you all are having a great Sunday, having a great night so far. We're going to continue to try to figure out what this major winter storm is going to do for portions of the south central U.S. to the Ohio Valley in the Northeast. There's a lot to discuss, and I really think this is going to be a major storm. And I'm talking about areas that are kind of in a snow drought, like Indiana. Could end up getting a significant winter storm, but there's a lot of people to cover in these videos, so we're going to break it down a little bit more different than what we've been breaking down these storm systems in the East Coast. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a panel of the GFS, compare it with the European for the same area, and then talk about ice accumulations and snow accumulations, sleet, things like that for each area, and compare the two models and contrast them. So that's what we're going to break down this video. If you guys have not subscribed, hit the subscribe button for me. Like the video if you like it. I appreciate all the support, guys. I promise I got big plans for this channel for the setup that might be much more appealing. I know I got my bedroom in back, and I know I haven't mentioned that. Some of you guys comment. My house is not big enough to have one room just set for making these videos, but things are going to change in the future, and it's because of y'all, and I appreciate the amazing support regardless. So let's get going, guys. Hit me up on my social media links over here. It's a great way to stay up to date with constant updates when we have major systems like this. So let's get going here. We're going to look at the GEFS ensembles and basically really break down what's going on here very, very quickly. And then we're going to get to the meat of the video, that pretty much the reason why everybody's watching here is they want to see who's going to get impacted by what. So this is the cold air. The Arctic air is going to continue to drop down here. We're getting into Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon. We're getting into overnight, and then we're into Wednesday morning. So this is February 2nd, right? And then let's go on to get to Wednesday afternoon. These are high temperatures. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see where the Arctic boundary is. You got highs getting into the 60s and 70s. Heck, someone in South Texas might hit 80 degrees. And then you have the Arctic sub-freezing air setting up across the Midwest and portions of the Ohio Valley. So Texas is pretty much cut in half. The Amarillo is going to be below freezing. But then areas of southeastern Texas are going to be it's going to be feeling like spring or early summer. This is going to continue to sag south, and what's going on is warm Gulf moisture is going to surge northward. And one thing I probably am going to mention in the next video is there's going to be a little bit of a severe weather threat for areas of Louisiana and Texas, and we'll mention that in the next video. I don't think it's going to be an outbreak or anything, but when you have changing and clashes of air masses like this, it tends to happen. But warm, moist air is going to surge northward. It's going to, a couple of low pressures are going to form with this Arctic boundary. And then you have that warm air advection, that moisture that surges over shallow Arctic air. And a lot of times, a nasty ice storm can set up in these kind of situations. But this cold air continues to sink down, almost like a blue northern kind of situation in Texas. And I know a lot of you guys know about that there in the south central U.S. and Midwest, what those crazy blue northerns can do and how they can drop temperatures dramatically in a 12 to 24 hour period. But this will continue to sag southeast, and then the air kind of gets synced in. So we'll look at this storm as a whole, and then we'll break down each individual sections, right? So GFS, the Arctic boundary is right here. It already pops off moisture right here. And the first event is underway, and really it hasn't went away from this. It's going to shear out eventually as it moves east, but this is already breaking out snow for areas like Chicago, Illinois, northern Indiana, southern Michigan. This is going to be a wintry mix of everything for areas of central Missouri, maybe southern Missouri. The Arctic air is at the same time when this moisture is riding up, the Arctic air is still sagging south. So areas like maybe Arkansas and then southern areas of Illinois and Indiana and maybe Ohio, it's not quite there yet. It's going to be mostly rain, but this will continue to sag south. And yeah, I mean, Kansas, Oklahoma begins to break out in some wintry weather. There's so many states to cover with this, guys. It really is. It's crazy trying to break down every single individual state, because it's going to cover several states going up like this all the way up to Maine. But this continues to go, and you check it out. It becomes a nasty winter storm for areas in Texas, Missouri, ice storm in Arkansas, and then this continues to ride north, and then a corridor of nasty ice is going to set up through the Ohio Valley. It's just going to get flat out nasty. This is going to be a very big time impactful storm for a lot of people. The jury's still out for areas of the Northeast, but let's break down this individually for each area. Let's look at the GFS first, right? going through the panels, we're getting into Tuesday evening, getting into Wednesday morning. Here comes the wintry mess setting up. This is the first wave, right? Setting up across Missouri. As we get into our Wednesday morning, you could have freezing rain, sleet, snow. It just depends on where you are in the state. Cold air continues to sag south. And then we're getting into our Wednesday evening, and the low pressure starts to develop here around in the Texas area somewhere. The low pressure is going to develop right in here somewhere. So that's going to amplify the moisture. More moisture is going to be involved, and at the same time, you got the cold air sinking into Texas and Oklahoma. So you get a wintry mix of everything starting to break out in Oklahoma. It just depends on where you are. You know, I could see somewhere like Oklahoma City just getting a mix of everything at first. And then the low pressure begins to sink. And not the low pressure, the cold air begins to sink. A low pressure continues to develop, and then you have wintry weather, frozen precipitation deep down into Texas, almost all the way down to Austin, Texas. You've got freezing rain as we're getting into our early Thursday morning, falling in Dallas, Texas. Snow starting to break out in Amarillo as we're getting our Thursday morning. This would be freezing rain to sleet into Dallas, Texas, and then it potentially switches to snow. Back this up and look at areas into Arkansas and to Missouri. The northern half of the state stays snow. This continues to ride up, and then maybe ice all the way into western areas of Kentucky, Mississippi, and then southern Illinois. And we'll look at the snowfall accumulations from the GFS. And to me, I would think this is overdone, but I really think once you get into areas of Missouri, Indiana, and Illinois, some of these aren't overdone. I don't think you're going to get 2 feet of snow in these areas. But I really think there's going to just be a lot of frozen precipitation that falls in these areas. I really do. But you notice there's a corridor showing 1.5 feet of snow in central Missouri. I just don't see that happening. But we'll see if it does. I mean, this is a dynamic storm. And when you have these Arctic boundaries that are moving so slow and low pressures are able to ride down the boundary, it just sets up for a winter storm after winter storm. And that's what happened last year in February in Texas and Arkansas and areas of Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana. 2 to 3 winter weather systems popped off of this Arctic boundary, and you just got a week straight of nothing but winter storm after winter storm. And it can happen in these situations. So snow showing all the way back in Texas. And this looks very impactful here. You know, you look at sleet totals, which I feel like are always overdone. It takes a lot of sleet to pile up 4 inches of sleet in southeastern Missouri. The most sleet I've ever seen is about 2.5, 3 inches of sleet here in Columbia, South Carolina. And it literally sleeted heavy for 8 hours straight. And if it was all snow, it probably would have been like 10 inches of snow. But this is a lot of sleet showing up all the way into Dallas. I would not be surprised if y'all turn this into a raging sleet storm for several hours. A lot of sleet in Oklahoma, northern Arkansas. You get into freezing rain, and this is when it gets dangerous. Some nasty freezing rain totals are setting up south of Dallas-Fort Worth. Getting into deep into central Texas. There's a nasty ice storm criteria starting to show up here in Oklahoma. Anything over 1/2 inch that you see is well into ice storm criteria. But look at this in the Quad States area. This is some ugly ice total showing up from the GFS. It's probably a little overdone. You can cut these in half, I would think, because it doesn't account for any kind of melting or anything like that. But you got decent freezing rain totals showing up as far southeast as western Tennessee and Kentucky. So there's going to be a nasty ice storm part of this. Now, there is some differences. Now, what we're going to do here now is look at the European for the same area. And there is definitely some differences here. As we're going forward here, the system explodes. There's not much differences with this first system. It's the second system. That rides through, and then here comes the low pressure develops, right? And you're thinking, okay, well, where's all that frozen precipitation that the GFS shows? Well, the European has kind of went away from it, this being a massive Texas winter storm. There's some differences here, right? It shows some wintry precipitation into Texas, like Dallas-Fort Worth, but it's like the low pressure doesn't really get amped up and really develop until it gets further east, and therefore it still slams areas like Missouri with heavy snow, freezing rain in the southeastern portions of the state, freezing rain for northern Arkansas. Still an impactful event in Oklahoma, but especially eastern Oklahoma. So it's a little different now. Yesterday it wasn't this morning it really wasn't showing this, and this continues to move through and impact these areas up here. We know, and we'll look at what the European shows as far as snowfall, and it's actually in agreement with the GFS as far as these crazy snowfall totals showing up here for Indiana, Missouri. I mean, y'all are gonna get clobbered in Missouri, Indiana, and Illinois. I'm gonna talk a little bit about Illinois and Indiana here in a second, but it definitely doesn't show as much snowfall for as areas for further south areas, but it really Amarillo shows a lot more snow, for example, than the GFS does. So you look at let's look at sleet totals from the Euro, and I think this is a lot more realistic, a lot more realistic. I don't know why the GFS overdoes sleet totals so much, but um, you got a tenth of an inch of ice showing up of sleet. That's a lot of sleet. I mean, not a lot, but when you get a half an inch of sleet, it takes some heavy sleet to pile up to a half an inch. I mean, sleet is so much smaller than snowflakes, right? So definitely icy across this, and then you look at the freezing rain, and still GFS and the Euro likes this area of Oklahoma to get some nasty freezing rain. But you notice there's not a lot of freezing rain showing up deep into Texas. But there is a nasty ice storm showing up in northern Arkansas and southern Missouri and into southern areas of Indiana. Let's keep this going, and let's go on and look at the Ohio Valley here and see what this looks like here. And we're getting through in time. This is going to crank up for the Midwest and the Ohio Valley as early as Tuesday afternoon and evening. Light snow breaking out in Chicago as early as late Tuesday evening. This continues to go. This is the first system, the first low. There's a secondary low that comes in after this, and that's the craziness with this system. It's so big, and it's a long duration event, but it's the same kind of deal. You're dealing with shallow Arctic air, so you have a lot of ice that you're dealing with this system. But you got snow in Chicago, you got freezing rain and sleet just south of Chicago into central Illinois, and then areas of northern Indiana. Snow breaking out in southern Michigan. This is snow for Detroit. Cold air continues to sag south, and snow. Some of that freezing rain begins to transition to snow in Indiana, like in Indianapolis and things like that. You got snow falling as we get into late Wednesday into areas like Cleveland, places like that. And here comes that secondary low off the GFS showing, and this is what's going to come up and dump a ton of frozen precipitation on these areas. I mean, this is a raging winter storm for Missouri, raging winter storm for southern Illinois and Indiana. And for you folks in Indiana, you really want snow. If you look at the GFS, it's going to be a mess. But then there's a chance it switches to all snow. But, I mean, look at this nasty ice corridor that sets up right here. I mean, there's going to be just a huge swath of an ice storm, basically. It's going to cover tons of states, and this is going to continue to move through and really just put some nasty ice and sleet closer to the big cities to the north, like Cleveland and places like that. But even you look down there in Kentucky, you look down into West Virginia, an icy look as the system really pulls away and more cold air gets entrenched into the system. But look at this. This is the GFS snowfall totals. I mean, it's wanting to put nearly 2 feet of snow in Cleveland, 1.5 feet in Detroit, over a foot in Chicago, which I could definitely see if this continues to trend north. But look, cutting through Illinois, Indiana, someone's going to be, if this was to happen, somebody would be very upset in southern Indiana. But there's so much to still work out with this. But there is going to be a huge swath, and it's going to be kind of narrow. I mean, you look at this. This isn't like a huge, as far as width-wise. It's not going to be a wide area. It's going to be relatively narrow to a degree of just heavy, heavy snow that sets up here. And, I mean, it's going to be crazy to see if any of these totals actually verify. It really is. So I'm not even going to show you the sleet totals because they're going to be ridiculous, and I don't think they're really reliable to show here. But look at these ice totals. That's what I'm talking about. There's going to be a stretch of nasty ice that shows up here just south of that snow and sleet line, and this is going to include areas like northern Arkansas, southeast Missouri, southern Illinois and Indiana, maybe the heart of Ohio. These areas don't get a lot of ice storms necessarily. I mean, y'all see ice for sure, but normally y'all are far north enough to get snow. But you get into Pennsylvania, this is showing some nasty ice into there too. So yeah, let's compare this with the European model, right? So let me go on and expand this a little bit. The European model is kind of the same for this area. It really is. Breaks out snow. The European is trending more north like the GFS now. So it's starting to bring areas like Chicago into the mix. In fact, the latest 18Z Euro just ticked a little bit further north. So that's good news for anybody in Chicago who wants snow. And I think y'all are far north enough where y'all aren't going to have to worry about any of a mix of things. So snow breaking out with the first system. This is affecting everybody. The second system swings through and just unloads on the same states I just talked about. Nasty freezing rain showing up. This is a pretty good agreement. I don't know why I can never say that word right, guys. Pretty good agreement with the ice setting up. Now, it's agreement with as far as it happening, but exactly where it sets up, there's still disagreements there. But shows a nasty ice storm in areas of southern Illinois and Indiana, and then it gets into Pennsylvania where the Arctic front hasn't quite dug down deep enough, and there's still a question mark there. It really is. There's so many question marks still, but what we do know is it's going to be an impactful storm. And what trips me out here is this is the European run. This is supposed to be the brother to the GFS, right? That kind of calms down the GFS when it's showing these outrageous snowfall totals. It's not quite as aggressive as the GFS, but I mean, look at this. You got 1.5 feet of snow showing up in areas of central and northern Indiana. Central Illinois, 1.5 feet of snow showing up. Northern Ohio, 1.5 feet of snow showing up in areas. Southern Michigan gets slammed, but you look at Chicago and you're just on the northern fringe of the heaviest stuff. But Cleveland, well over 1 foot of snow. It's crazy. It blows my mind here, But you look at the freezing rain totals from this. Nasty ice storm showing up. I know I've been repeated that 100 times, but there is a lot of agreement here. I mean, the Europeans printing out well over an inch of ice buildup here in Ohio. So I'm telling you, this is going to be a damaging ice storm for somebody, and this is definitely going to be the part of the storm that's probably going to be the most dangerous part. So we'll keep going here. We're going to look at the northeast and see what's going on here. There's actually was big time disagreements in this area yesterday, but there's actually been a little bit more agreement now. Now, people who love snow in southern New England aren't going to like this agreement, but now that the European has kind of trended towards the GFS, which is a little bit more amplified, it doesn't show a snowstorm for you folks anymore. But here we go. We're getting into Monday evening, getting into Tuesday morning, getting into Wednesday morning, and getting into Thursday morning. Here comes snow breaking out in the interior northeast. Ice for areas south. I mean, areas that normally definitely don't see ice, like Albany, New York. Getting into southern areas of Vermont and New Hampshire. But then the northern half of the states could be getting snow. And then Maine, I really think this is going to be a big, big event for you guys. But this is going to continue to sag south, but this will keep the big cities along the I-95 corridor like Boston and New York City, Baltimore, Philadelphia, just mainly rain. But as the cold air continues to clash down, you guys could change to freezing rain, to sleet, and then maybe a brief period of snow. But all those fine details are just so far out from being worked out here. But look at the snow showing up for the interior northeast, just ridiculous snowfall amounts. I mean, but it's what it shows, guys. I mean, it's hard for me to totally disagree with this. I think the GFS is a little overdone, but I mean, Buffalo, almost two feet of snow. Erie, almost 2 feet of snow. Interior areas of New York slammed. And this is from an Arctic boundary. It's not like it's from a low pressure, a coastal low developing here. You look at freezing rain, nasty ice showing up. Not quite as crazy as areas to the west, but you have some decent icing showing up in the interior areas of the northeast. Look at the European run, and I mean, it's not really that much different. You're getting into this run, you're getting into the same time frame, which is around Thursday morning, snow breaking out in the same areas. There's some pretty good agreement now. And then the ice to the south. Getting into Friday morning, it's almost identical to the GFS. It really is. Very, very similar now. And this was the area that was a lot different, right? Same thing, Europeans showing these outrageous snowfall totals for the same areas. Not quite as crazy, but I mean, it's there. And you look at ice totals for these same areas, and I mean, it shows a nasty ice storm in coastal areas of Maine. It's crazy. And nasty ice going all the way up into areas of northern Pennsylvania, areas of central New York State. Vermont and New Hampshire some ice, some glazing showing up in the big cities, but all these fine details are going to have to get worked out. But the conclusion you can take from this video, guys, is that this is actually going to happen. This looks to be a major winter storm. I would almost call it more major than the one that just happened in southern New England, just because it's covering so many more states. And the ice element to this, I mean, this is going to be catastrophic icing in certain areas, meaning it's going to pull down trees and things and knock out power for days. So we got a lot to figure out with this one. Thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate the support. And stick with me tomorrow morning. I'll have you an update. God bless.